Remember when the Burlington Northern had SD24s in their fleet with that funny bulge on the side? And how about the Pennsylvania Railroad with their Hammerhead RS3s? Hi, this is Burr Stewart, and welcome to another crazy video of goings-on my model railroad layout. As you can see, we had not only the SD24, but some narrow gauge operations, a modern Ferromex engine. We checked in on the progress of the West Seattle yard track laying, and generally just had a lot of fun with trains, which is what this channel is all about. So let's get started. I wasn't originally going to make you a train video this week, but Tim Smith brought over a photograph that he came across taken in 1970 of a gorgeous Chinese red CB&Q SD24. And I started thinking, wait a minute, I have a version of that engine. It was painted BN green shortly after the merger, and this particular model I purchased in 2013 and has a QSI decoder. I don't really like the way QSI decoders work, so I don't generally use it.
That thing would wind up and the smoke coming out of it was
However, you can't complain about that horn. And we decided to try to shove some cars up the 5% grade towards the Woodinville branch with this nice 6-axle power. So we got a running start on it, as you can see, but 5% grade is pretty serious, and I was a little skeptical that we could do this with one engine. Up a 5% grade? I don't know. No. And some of those are loaded cars, too.
Yeah. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, didn't work. So a little later, we double-headed it. But meanwhile, since we were getting all the engines away from the Bayside Yard, Stacy, and Burlington yards in preparation for a little home remodeling work we need to do, we brought this RS3 Hammerhead over that you've seen in some recent videos, and it took off like a proverbial whatchamacallit. Where are you taking that?
For a joyride!
A joyride, that's right. And so we took that over to the Interbay Yard. And that didn't mean we couldn't watch it for a minute. I asked him about the bell. Should have the bell for a grade crossing too. Oh, it's on. We gotta turn that volume up. But it turns out he did have the bell. You just can't quite hear it. I'll have to adjust those volume settings. This is Mukilteo, in between Everett and Seattle. And that Penn Central caboose has absolutely no business here on this railroad except that it accompanies the RS3 Hammerhead, which also has no business on this railroad, but both of them are pretty cool. You can see they're just passing some Boeing tool cars, as they call them, that were used for shipping airplane parts from all kinds of places, Kansas, California, British Columbia, Ontario, you name it. You could hear that beautiful idle sound a minute ago of the Alco diesel. Now, you're wondering what that Jeep is doing there. That's number 1799, which was the GP9 that was specially set up with baffles in the oil sump so that it could climb the 5% grade up to the Boeing plane manufacturing plant at Payne Field in Everett. Well, back in Interbay, Dave, who models the modern era, had brought over his new Ferromex locomotive and was running it with a couple of UP locomotives just so it would be realistic. And Tim, meanwhile, had brought over some of the very first type of double-stack cars ever built, which were run on the Burlington Northern. And so we decided to pull those cars. All of this is essentially a test. We're breaking in the Ferromex train engine. There's the bridge number 4. Very nice. And Tim has been getting caught up in all his scratch building or kit bashing projects. And in this case, he finally built the first of many of these very, very first design of double stack containers. You can see they were nervous about them falling over, so they built a bunch of extra strengthening.
That's off. And they won't track well.
And I'll have a better close-up view of these cars in a second. They're beautiful models, and he was just testing them to make sure they worked properly on this big layout. Now, meanwhile, I thought I would show you the progress down in the West Seattle yard. We've been building this recently. Pay no attention to that big fan sticking down. We'll remove it. But you can see I've got track labels. I have the Caboose Industries ground throws. And we have the car cards, waybills, and the car card boxes all labeled properly. And we're really making some progress here. We're basically in operation. Oops, didn't mean to flip the zoom on the camera. That's the story. There's going to be a slag dump there where the orange truck is, and a big scrap sorting facility on this near track. I thought I'd show you the schematic diagram of this area in case you want to stop the video and just study that for a minute. That's all brand new spins, numbers, and there are the industries, some of the industries in the town. Each industry spot has its own spins number, so it's easy to tell where you're supposed to be putting the car. That SP&S boxcar has got bagged cement coming from an Ideal Cement company that was over in West Seattle. And that RS-11 is what I've been temporarily using for switching here. I looked all over the room for the engine card that goes with it and couldn't find it. And the markers in the back are for continuing to improve the variation on tie color. Back to our Ferromex run. I know this is a little silly, but we have much fun with trains here. So you can't call it silly, it's called fun. So here is the detailed view of these beautiful early double stack cars. And we were joking about how it's much too late for me to run them on my 1973 layout, and they're much too early to run on Dave's modern era layout. So nobody can run them in this particular pool of friends. However, they're very cool models.
All right, no wobbles.
Here the train is pulling into the interbay yard on its way around.
But I haven't really been watching the wobble. And I haven't noticed the wobble.
Yeah, well,
Now we were studying this Ferromex engine and noticed that they have a detail on the side, which is probably a rear-looking camera. Maybe it's a forward-looking camera too. We don't really know.
I'm assuming it's a security camera. Too.
But we were just studying the various details. It also has protective grills on the windows to deal with any rock throwers. See, that's the camera there.
Yeah, that little bump.
It's a beautiful paint job. Of course, Dave will weather this up so it won't look like it just came from a factory.
I had a guy.
You can hear it sounds pretty good too, even idling.
Down in a river bridge, something like that, but not that far down.
We see engines like this in the Seattle area, even though we're so far from Mexico here, because a lot of these engines have run-through agreements on the railroads, and we find CSX out here and Norfolk Southern, the whole bit. Well, I mentioned we were getting things out of the way. We needed to get some of the narrow gauge equipment out of the way of the construction too. So Scott had never run the narrow gauge here before, and he was just thrilled to give it a try. In this case, we're pushing a whole bunch of boxcars out of the town of Paradise and up to the town of Opportunity. This is a very nicely remotored, redecoded Blackstone engine, which has a TCS decoder in it, which is why it sounds so realistic. Also, it runs a lot smoother than any of the engines without sound keepers. This is about a 2% grade on essentially a spiral Nolix that goes up the central peninsula on my layout. That track to the left there is a cutoff that we use for continuous running around a loop rather than going from point to point. Now here we are having passed the town of Hope. We're coming to see if we can pick up some cars in the town of East Hope. This is 5 Blackstone boxcars. You can hear the steam generator that's generating the electricity for that headlight. It's quite a job to couple all these cars on there. And then he pulled them back. And of course our goal then was to push them into the tunnel there to the left of the water tower. He didn't couple it right, so I had to push forward. I couldn't decide if you wanted to see the steam engine pushing or the coupling action up at the front. So, of course, I did both. There's the action in the back, there's the steam engine off to the side. Now, of course, we both noticed that there was a nice bright red water tank there that we probably should stop and take on water once we get the train all the way back onto the main line. These are also mainly Blackstone flat cars, though one of them might be a Katy Microtrains car. See how the couplers bunch up? Yeah, I think that one next to the caboose is a steel frame flat. Then he tried to uncouple the caboose, tried to flick the switch, but ended up knocking the caboose. The caboose is, of course, a West Side prototype, and it was scratch built by the very famous Jim Vale, who was a HOn3 modeler in the Bay Area in California. He passed away a couple of years ago. I think I have a video about his layout if you look hard enough on my YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it in the description. And his layout was very inspirational to me, and I had the opportunity to buy that caboose at a swap meet, so that's why we're running it in his honor. Now, like I said, this is a 2% grade, and it's pretty amazing to see that this one Blackstone locomotive can push all 10 of these cars up that grade. I wasn't expecting this to work out, but it did. Yeah, so we're going to stop and take on water. I mean, this was eye-opening for Scott. He used to be a Santa Fe locomotive engineer, and he thought diesels were his thing, and he enjoyed this steam engine running so much that it really threw him for a loop, as they say. So I put down the water tank as far as it goes right now. Now, of course, it should go all the way down to the tender. And meanwhile, there was the Ferromex train going by, so I thought I'd show you that, and you can see how empty the Bayside yard is now. So that's been enough time for catching water. I put the spout back up and we can get back underway. Very nice. See if I can get that long cut started up this hill. Looks like it's doing it. So we went around to the other side to see what was happening. And of course, by this time, our train, caboose first, had made it all the way into the town of Opportunity. There's the Opportunity main station there with the observant deer paying no attention to it whatsoever. And if you're a West Side fan, you know which caboose this was. Named after a Swede named Larson, no doubt. Yeah, that's that first car is a steel underframe black car, and then the others are stock black stock. But if you look carefully, you can see they're a little suede, which I think is really cool. I don't know if that's just because they've been sitting with weights on them for several years now, but I'm really pleased that they look that good. I don't know about you, but I always find flat cars to be very appealing on a model railroad or a real railroad. They can have any load you might want to put on them, and you can call it realistic. Yeah, I didn't want to dwell on this so long, but we don't run the narrow gauge that often, and I really enjoy it when we do, and I hope you do too. Behind these cars, you can see a mine building that has some snow on it, and that was originally on Tom Enlow's layout, way out in the suburbs of Seattle. And Tom was a pioneer in realistic model railroad operations, and he was one of the ringleaders of the Seattle area's OPSIG group. OPSIG standing for the Operations Special Interest Group. I'll put the link to that in the video description as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of some of our recent goings-on here at the Burlington Northern. This is our SD24, and look at the rest of the channel for other kind of fun things. And in the meantime, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains. Looks like a running start.